From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
The job that I had there required me to travel all over the country and to talk to soldiers at every level, from the highest commander to the lowest 19-year-old private. And what I saw out there over time, especially, began to be clear was so different than what the public assertions are that I started to have, some moral problems with it.
The Afghanistan report the Pentagon doesn't want you to read. We'll speak with Rolling Stone reporter Michael Hastings, who published the report. Then a new study shows more than two-thirds of New York hospitals violate the charity care law. We'll speak with Elizabeth Benjamin, Vice President of Community Service Society, who released the report.
The healthcare system is in crisis. Costs are escalating at a sort of never-ending level, and we need, as a country, to sort of grapple with this issue.
Then today marks the first anniversary of the Wisconsin uprising. Today, Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker is in the midst of a recall and faces an investigation for campaign corruption. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The U.S.-led NATO force in Afghanistan has apologized for an airstrike last week that killed 8 young Afghan children. Local residents blamed NATO at the time, but it took several days for NATO to admit fault. Earlier today, NATO's Communications Director, General Louis Boone, confirmed the bombing and expressed regret.
And I would like to first express our most sincere condolences to the families and loved ones of the 8 victims of this small community, in which 8 young Afghans lost their lives as a result of an airstrike by coalition forces. Despite all tactical directives being followed precisely, we know now the unfortunate results of this engagement.
According to the United Nations, civilian casualties in Afghanistan increased for a 5th straight year in 2011 from nearly 2,800 to more than 3,000. European finance ministers have canceled a key meeting on Greece's financial crisis, saying Greek officials have failed to meet all the required conditions for a massive bailout. Greek lawmakers approved a second austerity measure Sunday that would lead to massive public sector layoffs and benefit cuts. But Eurozone finance ministers say Greek leaders have failed to offer assurances the austerity measures will be implemented following massive protests in the capital, Athens. Syrian forces have launched new operations targeting opposition activists as the bombardment of the city of Homs continues for a 12th day. Syrian tanks have reportedly shelled areas of Hama, Syria's 4th largest city. Raids against opposition activists have also been conducted in the capital, Damascus. In Homs, an oil pipeline was attacked earlier today, setting off a major blaze. The government of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, meanwhile, has announced it'll hold a referendum on a new draft constitution later this month, followed by parliamentary elections within 90 days. Opposition activists are already vowing to boycott the votes, calling them a front to maintain Assad's grip on power. The U.S.-backed monarchy in Bahrain imposed a heavy security presence in the capital Manama Tuesday to contain protesters marking the first anniversary of the start of pro-democracy protests. Armored vehicles patrolled Manama as state forces fired tear gas at a group of activists gathered at Pearl Roundabout, the focal point of opposition demonstrations. A number of people were arrested, including 6 U.S. citizens with the group Witness Bahrain, who've come to monitor the crackdown. All 6 will be deported. Their expulsions follow the deportations of another 2 U.S. activists from Bahrain earlier this week. You can go to our website, democracynow.org, to see our interview with the human rights lawyers who were deported on Monday's broadcast. President Barack Obama hosted Chinese Vice President and presumptive leader in waiting Xi Jinping at the White House Tuesday as part of a key U.S. visit. Xi is in line to assume the Chinese presidency in March of 2013. As the two sat in the Oval Office, Obama said he would press China on its human rights policies and on currency manipulation.
We want to work with China to make sure that everybody is working by the same rules of the road when it comes to the world economic system, and that includes ensuring that there is a balanced trade flow between not only the United States and China, but around the world. It also means that on critical issues like human rights, we will continue to emphasize what we believe is the importance of recognizing the aspirations and rights of all people.
Outside the White House, hundreds of people rallied to protest China's treatment of Tibet, ethnic Uyghurs, and members of Falun Gong. Aleem Saitoff of the Uyghur American Association urged President Obama to pressure Xi Jinping on alleged Chinese abuses.
Our hope is that when President Obama and Vice President Joe Biden meet with Chinese Vice President Xi Jinping, would raise, in addition to other security and trade issues, would raise human rights issues, specifically in the case of Uyghur Muslims and Tibetan Buddhists, and in addition to the Chinese dissidents and lawyers who have been locked up and disappeared.
A prison fire in Honduras has killed at least 272 inmates, many of whom burned to death in their cells. The deaths were blamed on the absence of a guard who had the cell's keys. The fire erupted Tuesday night at a prison about 90 miles north of the capital, Tegucigalpa. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta appeared before lawmakers Tuesday to defend President Obama's plans to increase the military budget by lower levels than in previous years. Panetta insisted the U.S. will spare no resources in military operations in Asia.
There's nothing like a carrier to be able to allow for quick deployment in that area, and that'll give us a great capacity to be able to show our force structure in the Pacific. In addition to that, we're going to maintain obviously a military presence. We already have one in Korea, but we're going to maintain an additional rotational presence with our Marines throughout that area. We've just developed an agreement with Australia to do a rotational presence there. We're working with the Philippines on hopefully a similar arrangement there as well.
Congressional leaders have reached a tentative compromise to extend the payroll tax cut through the end of 2012, saving families who make $50,000 a year an estimated $1,000 annually. The plan would also stop benefits for the long-term unemployed from expiring next month, as well as blocking a cut in reimbursements to doctors who accept Medicare. Republicans dropped several controversial provisions, including one that required jobless people to pursue high school equivalency degrees in order to receive aid. Hundreds of people rallied at the Alabama State House in Montgomery Tuesday in protest of the state's controversial anti-immigrant law. The measure has already forced thousands of undocumented immigrants, primarily Latino, to flee the state. The law's provisions include requirements for the checking of immigration status during traffic stops by police or for state workers processing license requests, public school enrollment, and driver's permits. Activists came to the State House from across Alabama and say they plan to remain for several days. Alabama lawmakers have promised to modify the law, but opponents are calling for its full repeal. The Florida State Senate has defeated a measure that would have privatized at least 27 prisons, creating the largest corporate-run prison system in the country. Supporters of the Florida plan had touted it as a cost-saving measure, while critics said it would harm state workers and lead to a profit-driven system. Despite the vote, Republican Governor Rick Scott could still privatize the prisons through executive authority. According to the Justice Department, the number of prisoners being added to privately run jails is outpacing the overall prison population by 17 to 4%. A group of dog lovers rallied outside the Westminster Kennel Club dog show at New York's Madison Square Garden on Tuesday in protest of Republican presidential hopeful Mitt Romney. Animal rights groups have criticized Romney for transporting his dog in a kennel tied to the roof of his car during a family vacation in the 80s. The protesters demonstrated against Romney with their pets in tow.
The main purpose purpose of this was really to use the dog show as a backdrop to get the information out to the general public about Mitt Romney and his mistreatment of his dog many years ago, and what that says about his character and what that says about his fitness to be president of the United States. Someone who can mistreat his dog the way Mitt Romney did is probably not the kind of person that we want as president of the United States.
A new report has found deep flaws in the U.S. voter registration system, including the presence of more than 1.8 million dead people still listed as active voters. Researchers with the Pew Center on the states also found 24 million active voter registrations. That's 1 in every 8 are either invalid or inaccurate. Meanwhile, an estimated 1/4 of U.S. citizens who are eligible to vote are not registered. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Nermeen Sheikh. Welcome to our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.